Friday, March 1st, 2002. A brown envelope was quietly left at the front door of the Springfield Tribune, a small town paper in Missouri. No one saw who dropped it off. No one paid attention as it landed on a cluttered desk alongside junk mail and flyers. No return address, no note, just heavier than it should have been. Inside, an old VHS tape crusted with dried mud and a hand-drawn map marked in red ink, pointing to a single spot deep in the woods outside town. The newsroom staff had no idea they were about to witness something the police had never even dared to imagine. When they hit play, there was no title screen, no opening credits, just a dimly lit room, a flickering fluorescent light, and the sound of a woman breathing. She sat in the corner, hands bound, face swollen. Then a man's voice, just behind the camera. To the officers watching this, you're already too late. He wasn't hiding, he was filming. He murdered on camera and mailed the tape to the press like a personal memo to law enforcement. Catch me, but only after you've watched everything I made. When the police followed the map, they found a body, exactly where it said, wrapped neatly, carefully, clean. Next to it, a shattered VHS camcorder and a headless doll. Nothing about it was random. It was all deliberate, a deadly game, captured frame by frame, made specifically for those who wear the badge. Police thought they were investigating a murder, but really, they'd just been invited to a screening they couldn't walk out of. He wasn't the kind of killer who acted on impulse. He didn't kill because he lost control. Quite the opposite. Everything was framed like a documentary. Brutal, precise, with rhythm, with lighting, with sound, and with only one real protagonist: fear. After the first tape, the one that left the entire Springfield Tribune newsroom in stunned silence, came the second, then the third. Each tape varied in style and behavior, but one thing never changed. He never hid. Not his face, but his intent. In every recording, there was no ragged breathing, no shaky hands. His hand never drifted into frame by accident. Every movement was deliberate. The camera wasn't just placed on a shelf. It was aligned, framed, lit, balanced. As one officer later said, he didn't just record the crime, he directed it. His victims were always people no one would notice were missing, at least not right away. Young women living alone, sometimes students, sometimes office temps moving between apartments, sometimes retail clerks working small-town jobs. They didn't disappear from the world. They simply slipped out of society's sight. And it was in that blind spot that he moved. No one knew exactly how he got close. There were no signs of forced entry. No one remembered seeing him. No plates caught on traffic cams. But then, they were gone, and days later, another tape would show up. Sometimes mailed to a freelance reporter, sometimes dropped off at a local TV station. Never to the police, never. He sent them to where the audience would be. Each tape began the same way. Silence. No music, no intro, no title card. Just a fixed camera, usually in a closed-off space, sometimes a basement, sometimes a living room draped in black tarp, sometimes an old garage humming with flickering fluorescent lights. And then the main character appeared. Not the killer, the victim, a woman, hands bound, mouth taped, sometimes still conscious, bracing, unsure of what's coming next. Then came the footsteps, not rushed, not heavy. He entered, but never into frame. Only his voice, low, calm, just above a whisper, like a director coaching an actor from behind the lens. Look at the camera. Breathe slowly. We're going to make something they'll never forget. He wasn't like the deranged sadists who filmed gore for thrills. He didn't crave the blood. He craved the collapse, the unraveling of spirit. In one 26-minute tape, he never laid a finger on the victim. He just spoke, gave commands, manipulated, crushed. The girl sat in a chair, untouched, uncut. But her eyes slowly faded, like her soul was trying to evacuate her own body. By minute 18, she started to cry. That's when he stepped closer, never revealing a hand, never revealing his form, and placed a small doll in her lap. And in a strange, hushed moment, he said, "Now you're ready." The death always happened off camera. The tape always cut abruptly. No one ever saw the final moment. But when the police followed the accompanying maps, always hand-drawn, disturbingly simple, yet precisely accurate, they found the bodies, always at the exact marked location, and always with one repeating detail, a symbolic object, a doll, a shattered camera, a porcelain mask lying next to the corpse. It was never random. It was his signature. The calling card of a man who saw himself not as a killer, but as an artist of fear. The police started to realize he wasn't killing out of instinct. He was constructing a series of works, each victim a chapter in a message. And that message wasn't meant for families, wasn't meant for the public. It was meant for them, for the police, for the press, for anyone forced to watch. And with every tape they played, he won. He forced them to participate. In one particularly chilling tape, not mailed to any outlet, but left inside the private mailbox of a female journalist, he looked directly into the lens. His face remained hidden, but his voice was lower, colder. "You've watched them all. So let's see how this one ends." Audio analysts studied the tapes. Ceiling fan hum, echoes of the room, a dog barking faintly in the distance. They matched every environmental sound to national databases, trying to narrow down the location. But nothing held. He moved. He changed his filming space like changing sets. No one knew who he was, but everyone had seen his work. After the fourth tape, the FBI assigned a special agent to oversee the case. It was officially labeled a targeted media-based homicide communication. In internal memos, they didn't call him a killer. They called him the media predator, a hunter with a camera. He didn't just kill, he curated pain. He staged it. He made the audience feel it. And when the wrong clip aired accidentally on a local station, a few seconds of the torture sequence broadcast to hundreds of homes, he smiled somewhere, in silence, because now everyone had seen. And what's seen can't be unseen. What terrified investigators wasn't what appeared in frame, but what he deliberately left out. No one saw the moment of death. No blood, no violence on screen. And yet, death saturated every second of those quiet videos, not with imagery, with feeling. And that's something no other killer had ever achieved. He didn't kill to satisfy some thirst. He killed to force the world to confront its own helplessness. At the end of each tape, sometimes a single line appeared. Glitchy, shaky, burned into the VHS with outdated text. One more done. How many will you watch before you stop me? And just like that, the tables turned. It wasn't the public he was testing. It was them. The police. The law. Every tape he sent was a challenge, a declaration. No hiding, no remorse, just one question, still echoing behind the lens. How many more will it take? Tape 3. Later labeled by the FBI as Tape 3. Subject Anna Wells. Was the longest recording he'd ever sent up to that point. 31 minutes and 18 seconds. But its significance had nothing to do with length. What set it apart was the moment he stopped hiding. Not a full reveal, but for the first time, his voice filled the frame with an almost sovereign authority. And for the first time, what was captured wasn't just physical torment, but the slow, merciless breakdown of a human mind. It begins with a black screen and a sound. Breathing. Not fast, not panicked, but tight, controlled, like someone trying to press down a rising panic attack inside their chest. 17 seconds in, the image flickers on. A small room, dim light dripping from a crooked fluorescent tube in the ceiling. Black tarp along the back wall. A stationary camera. In the center, a young woman. Dark hair. A dirt-streaked white shirt, hands tied behind her, kneeling on cold tile. Her name was Anna Wells. 23 years old. Interior design student. Had just moved to Springfield 3 weeks earlier. Living alone. She wasn't crying, wasn't speaking, wasn't begging, just sitting. Her eyes scanning the room, restless. Her right cheek slightly swollen. A small cut on her forehead. He never appeared, but his voice saturated the room. No yelling, no laughter. Just a steady, calm tone. Like a late-night radio host easing you into a dream. Anna, let's breathe together. In, out, in, out. You're going to do well. I believe in you. The first 6 minutes. No touching, no screaming. But the tension coils tighter and tighter until it's unbearable. Even for the viewer. Anna starts crying around minute 8. Not from pain, but from confusion. Not knowing where she was, who she was with, what was coming. He approaches, off-screen, and places a small plastic doll in her lap. She trembles, nearly collapses. His voice again, closer this time. I brought her, so you wouldn't be alone. Then, at minute 12, he asks, would you like to say something to the camera? Anna doesn't answer, just lowers her head. He asks again, then a third time. Finally, her voice, raspy, choked, like her throat was weighed down by stone. Please, please, just stop. Silence. Then, you're doing great. By minute 18, the scene shifts. Same room, same camera. But Anna's now strapped to a wooden chair, legs bound, head propped up, eyes facing the lens, no more resistance, her gaze hollowed out. At the time, no one understood what broke her. But later, frame-by-frame analysis revealed something hanging behind the camera. just out of view in the final scene. A printout of Anna's own senior design project. An interior mock-up she'd submitted for graduation. He had studied her closely for a long time. The rest of the video unfolds like a ritual, deliberate, unrushed. He asks her, "Do you feel seen?" Anna nods. There's no visible torture, no screaming, no physical assault. But every word, every pause, every still breath, cut deeper than any knife. At minute 26, Anna breaks, full sobs, body convulsing, short, ragged breaths. No one touches her. No violence is shown, but she shatters. And the most harrowing moment comes in the final minute. His voice softens, almost gentle. "They'll find you, but they won't understand, because pain doesn't show up on film." Then, nothing. No ending, no music. Just black screen, then static. The hand-drawn map that came with the tape led officers to a patch of undeveloped land behind Highway 44, 11 miles outside Springfield. At 4:23 p.m. that same day, Anna Wells' body was found, placed carefully under an old oak tree, wrapped in black plastic. In her arms, the same doll from the tape. Beside her, a shattered VHS camcorder. And something new. A small porcelain theater mask cracked along one eye. A forensic tech wrote in their report, "No signs of sexual assault, no stab wounds." But the victim's facial expression matched the final frame exactly. The fear was still there, frozen. When law enforcement reviewed the video, they had to stop twice. A veteran investigator of sexual crimes later said, "I've seen hundreds of evidence tapes, but I've never seen someone disintegrate like that. That wasn't acting. You can't fake that." Tape 3 marked a turning point. This wasn't serial murder anymore. This was a redefinition of terror through image. He didn't kill in the shadows. He didn't bury the bodies. He presented them. Through silence, through dim light, through a creeping helplessness that seeped from victim to viewer. After Anna Wells, journalists began refusing to open unsolicited packages. Some newsrooms banned VHS players altogether. Some reporters left the profession. Some just stopped sleeping. And for the first time, in internal memos, the FBI formally classified the suspect. The subject is not just killing. He is building a body of work. A work of art, with each tape a chapter, each victim a line of dialogue, and every viewer part of the unwilling audience. Tape 3 wasn't the most violent, but it was the one that made people hesitate before watching the next. Not because it shocked, but because in Anna Wells' eyes, people saw something else. She didn't die from what was done to her. She died because someone was filming her fall apart. After the death of Anna Wells and the release of Tape 3, there was no doubt left. This wasn't a string of random killings. It was a performance, staged, structured, designed for one very specific audience, the entire system of law enforcement. But the most terrifying part was this. Even though he wanted to be seen, even though he invited investigators to watch, they still couldn't get any closer to finding out who he really was. The FBI launched a specialized task force with an internal code name, Case Glass Theater, because, as one agent put it, we're standing in the middle of a pre-arranged performance. We can see everything, but we can't step on stage. Every frame of the tapes was dissected. Sound, light, color, composition. Every detail treated like a crime scene. They started with the background audio. In tape 3, a metallic click could be heard every 5 seconds. Faint, distant, but rhythmic. After cross-referencing thousands of environmental samples, they pinned it down. The distinct sound of an old cable-operated freight elevator. The kind used in industrial buildings from the 1980s. A small lead, but the only one they had. Meanwhile, forensic technicians reconstructed the hand-drawn map that came with the tape. It looked sloppy, but the strokes followed a pattern. Same type of pen, same drawing direction, and most notably, left-handed. The shakiness in the lines indicated mild motor tremors or peripheral nerve damage. Several neurologists believed the person behind it may have suffered a minor brain injury or was experiencing side effects from heavy sedatives, another puzzle piece. But the real breakthrough didn't come from forensics. It came from someone who survived. 3 weeks after Anna Wells' death, in the middle of the night, a woman burst into the front desk of a roadside motel in Rolla, Missouri. Her name was Jasmine Tyler, 29 years old, both wrists bruised, ligature marks around her neck, wearing nothing but a man's oversized coat. She managed one sentence before collapsing. "He's filming. He's filming me." At the hospital, once stable, Jasmine told investigators, a man had pretended to need help with a stalled car on the shoulder of the road. When she stepped closer, he struck her, hard, at the base of her skull. She woke up bound, in a closed room, dim light, a heavy bleach stench in the air, and the unmistakable whir of a VHS camera running nearby. He didn't hit her, didn't assault her. He just kept asking one question, over and over. "Now that you know you're being filmed, how does it make you feel?" Jasmine said he never wore a mask, but stayed mostly behind the camera. She remembered one thing clearly. His eyes, gray, sunken, like two burnt-out coals. When he loosened her restraints to move equipment, she bolted. Somehow, she kicked open the door, ran barefoot across a gravel lot, hid in a dumpster behind the motel, and was eventually found by staff. Detectives grilled her for details. What did she hear? What did it smell like? What stood out? She said 3 things. A ceiling fan, old and slow, one wooden blade, cracked, a sharp bleach odor, like an old hospital mixed with damp mold, a gray VHS camcorder, oversized lens, mounted on a wooden tripod. The kind only someone with industry experience would use. That changed everything. The FBI cross-referenced old warehouses, abandoned garages, and shuttered production studios in the Springfield Rolla region. They identified 41 possible locations. All were empty, but one made them stop. Marshall Sound Studios, shut down in 1996 after a bankruptcy filing. Now a derelict storage space. Inside, the task force found a small room behind a soundproof wall. The floor was scuffed from something heavy being dragged. A roll of duct tape, partially used. And what froze the team in place? A plastic doll, identical to the one from tape 3. There, they discovered an unfinished VHS tape. Not yet mailed. No victim on screen. Just an empty room. Camera running. And his voice, doing a sound check. Check 1. Check 2. Room tone set. Let's begin. Soon. The voice was analyzed. Matched. Compared. Nothing. No criminal record, no fingerprints, no DNA. Each time he stepped behind the camera, he wiped away every trace, like a meticulous producer resetting the stage. But then, the theory shifted. What if he was a producer, a film student who dropped out, a post-production worker, a technician with just enough knowledge to disappear? The FBI built a new profile. Someone with technical skills. A history of neurological symptoms. Left-handed. Lived in Missouri within the last 10 years. From 8,200 possible names, they narrowed it to 117. Then 16. Then 1. Stephen M.C., 38 years old. Film school dropout. Expelled for refusal to follow directorial protocol. Worked at a VHS repair shop in Springfield. Vanished from all records in 1999. No medical files, no driver's license, no social media. It was as if he erased himself on purpose. A quiet arrest unit was dispatched. They dug through utility records, old lease agreements, classmates. Finally, they zeroed in on an abandoned garage south of the city. May 12th, just after midnight. The team breached the property. No chase, no fight. Just one man, sitting in the dark, facing a camera. He looked up, smiled faintly, and said, "You watched them all, didn't you?" Stephen M.C. was taken into custody without a fight. When the tactical team broke through the doors of the abandoned garage, he was sitting alone in the dark. A dusty VHS camcorder mounted on a tripod in front of him, powered off, waiting. He looked up, smirked. Not surprised, not afraid. And the first words out of his mouth weren't denial, weren't questions. They were a quiet confirmation. Almost like he'd been waiting for this. "You watched them all, didn't you?" He didn't ask, "Why am I being arrested?" Didn't ask who turned him in. Didn't ask for a lawyer. He just stared, deep-set hollow eyes, expressionless, like he was studying the expressions of the agents walking toward him, like they were just the final characters in a film he had yet to finish. When they cuffed him, he bowed his head, silent. No resistance, no protest. In the trunk of his car, they found a fresh, unmarked hand-drawn map. On the passenger seat, a blank white VHS tape. And in the pocket of his coat, a broken piece of porcelain mask, the exact kind found beside Anna Wells' body. There was no question now. He was the one behind it all. The hand behind the camera. At Greene County Jail, Missouri, Stephen was placed in solitary confinement. Before any formal interrogation, he made one request, and only one, to speak to a journalist, not a lawyer, not family, not a doctor. He gave a name, Lauren Mays, the girl who watched tape 3 first. She deserves an ending. The request was denied, and that was the last time he ever said anything that resembled meaning. Across 3 days of interrogation, Stephen didn't speak. He sat perfectly still, hands on the table, eyes unfocused, breathing steady. When pressed, he gave a faint, closed-lip smile, flat, emotionless, and occasionally turned his head toward the camera, recording the interview, as if to check the frame, as if this wasn't an interrogation. It was the final scene of his film. One detective asked directly, "Why did you make those tapes?" Stephen spoke only once. To make them feel it, not the victims, the ones watching. He never denied what he did, but he never confessed. There were no apologies, no remorse. Whenever the names of victims were mentioned, Stephen went quiet. Sometimes he'd smile again, not from joy, but like someone rewatching a scene he already knew by heart. On the fourth day, Stephen refused to eat. The jail doctor requested a medical evaluation, but Stephen remained silent. He wouldn't sign any paperwork, refused visitation clothes, made no outside contact. When asked if he wanted to leave a statement, he scribbled one line on a torn sheet of paper. "If they want closure, let them watch the last tape." At 3:12 a.m. on the fifth day of his detainment, a corrections officer noticed the light in his cell was off. When they opened the door, Stephen was already gone. Hanged by his bedsheet, tied to the air vent. No note, no final words. But under his pillow, they found a VHS tape. No case. Wrapped in a white shirt, labeled by hand, "Final Cut." The video showed Stephen sitting in front of the camera. A gray-white room. He wore a plain white shirt, collar slightly crooked. No words, no movement, just staring, unblinking, expression blank, but his eyes, locked on the lens, almost piercing through it. For 2 minutes and 47 seconds, he simply stares. Viewers later described the footage as suffocating, as if trapped in a room with no exits, forced to stare back at their own helplessness. At the end, Stephen nods, slow, almost like a final curtain call. And then, the screen cuts to black. No sound, no fade out, no signature. A special investigative unit was formed to process the evidence. In total, they recovered 9 tapes, 5 maps, 4 porcelain masks, and a handwritten, script-like document full of strange symbols, still undeciphered. Psychological evaluations concluded that Stephen wasn't delusional, not schizophrenic, not lost in hallucinations. He was obsessed with presence, with forcing people to witness the unbearable and then leaving them alone with it. He didn't kill for physical pleasure. He killed to construct an experience, one that the audience couldn't unsee, one they had no choice but to watch and react to. And when they finally did react, he disappeared. One investigator later wrote in an internal report, "We didn't catch him. He wanted to be found, but only after we'd seen everything he made." There was no trial, no defense attorney, no sentencing, just the tapes, and the silence that stretches on long after that final frame. Stephen MC's file was so thin, it felt almost fabricated. No criminal record, no documented mental health history, no driver's license, no rental agreements, no bank accounts. It was as if he drifted through society like a shadow and then stepped off the edge of the world. But when investigators started digging through the past, pulling threads, sifting fragments, a picture slowly began to form. And the most disturbing thing wasn't what he did, it was what he never had. Stephen was born in 1964, somewhere in Missouri, to a working-class family no one could quite remember. His father died in a construction accident. His mother worked as a seamstress, quiet, withdrawn, never active in the community. Neighbors recalled Stephen only as the kid who never talked. He didn't play, didn't cause trouble, didn't skip school. He just, watched, always from the background, like he was on the other side of a pane of glass. The only thing that seemed to interest him was the camera. One former teacher remembered Stephen bringing in an old camcorder to film his classmates doing a science experiment. He never turned in a project, never explained what the footage was for. After high school, he enrolled in a short filmmaking course at a local community art school. But records show he dropped out after a confrontation with a professor. One note from that instructor read, "Stephen refuses to tell stories linearly. He said, a script doesn't need an ending, as long as the viewer never forgets the final image." From there, Stephen bounced between odd jobs. He repaired VHS players at a neighborhood electronics shop, did post-production on a few wedding videos. But he never stayed anywhere long. No friends, no listed family. By 1999, he disappeared from every known system. No leases, no taxes, no medical records. It was like he had erased himself, deliberately, until he existed only through the lens. Later, psychologists concluded Stephen wasn't delusional, wasn't psychotic. He was the product of something colder, a lifetime of being unseen. In a world that only notices the loud, he had gone unnoticed for too long. He was the man nobody asked about, the man nobody remembered. And so, he created pain so loud, it forced the world to look. No traumatic childhood, no visible scars, just a life of silence, stretched thin, until it needed to scream, not through a voice, but through VHS tape. The death of Stephen MC didn't close the case. It only left a silence louder than gunfire. There was no trial, no confession, no public hearing where a community could unleash its rage, just a body, swaying from a bedsheet in a concrete cell. A final, wordless VHS tape. And a justice system left staring at the truth. Everything he wanted them to see, they had already seen. Among the collected evidence were 9 completed tapes, each one a chapter in what the FBI came to label Project Unseen, a cinematic body of death, never meant for public release. 4 of the tapes were permanently sealed by federal order, their content deemed too psychologically damaging to disclose. One tape, believed to have been recorded in mid-2001, was never recovered. Though its corresponding map remains filed in evidence, the tape itself vanished. Either Stephen took it with him when he died, or he destroyed it beforehand. One last secret he refused to share, in place of a confession. Stephen left behind still frames, voiceless recordings, cold, deliberate nods, and an afterimage that no case file could contain. The feeling that he's still watching through a dead lens that never really stopped recording. He left no final words, no explanation, no reason. Just a stare into the lens and a single nod. In an age where every crime is hunted down through cameras, fingerprints, and digital trails, Stephen M.C. didn't try to disappear. He did the opposite. He built a stage for the powerlessness of the system itself. Each tape was a summons, each map a direction. But by the time they arrived where he wanted them to be, his scene was done, and he had already slipped off stage. Some kill for pleasure, some kill in a fit of rage, but he killed to force others to look at the pain, at the silence, at themselves. Now the tape has stopped, but the feeling remains. The sense that even after you've walked away from the screen, something is still watching you from the other side. This is true crime unseen, where forgotten truths return in the dark. If you want to keep following the stories no one dares to tell, hit subscribe and drop a comment below. What do you think is more terrifying? The crime itself, or the stare that forces you to see it?